All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk about multiple pathways. To me, I call it residual boulders. Um, so in Arizona, I had asked my cousin. I told her, "Could you drop me off at a homeless shelter?" And I think this would be better. So I asked her if she could drop me off at a homeless shelter. And she said yes, and so I ended up getting into a big old brawl there, and then I got kicked out of that shelter, and so I ended up having to become a transient when I was living at that shelter, or when I was living in Arizona. What had happened is I ended up taking the light rail to the main city, and then kind of just wandering around to see where I can find some services that could help me get up my feet. It took me probably like to go to about two or three different homeless shelters. But while I was out in the street, I was kind of just praying and making sure that I didn't, I can barely see myself, so I don't really know if I'm filming. I was praying, and I was trying to see if where I can get the best services to kind of help me get back on my feet. And so one of the things that I had noticed or had come across is when I went to get certified for peer support specialist, is one of the vocabulary terms that they talk about is multiple pathways. And so we look at it in a different way. Well, in terms of most people who either drink or use drugs are either one, able to manage and have a normal life, or to not do it again, and that's called cessation. Or some people are able to or use drugs and then use alcohol, and then they are unable to manage, and so they end up going on this kind of journey, or where they have multiple pathways and utilizing different services. And so sometimes when people go through go to different programs, the hope is when they walk through the doors is that they would get utilize the services to the best of their ability, so that way it's like a one shot and you're done. And so for me, it took a while because I didn't have in my mind a bigger picture. All I had was to rely on faith at the moment. And so when I went to the Phoenix Rescue Mission, I ended up noticing that while in my prayers, I was reminded of these residual boulders. Is that once I found myself homeless again after going from one shelter to another shelter and then to another shelter, I wasn't able to utilize it to the best of the ability. And so when I came home, I kind of started to notice some people who started hitting homelessness and while using drugs, or homelessness as an elderly person. And I started to realize that I had the same frame of mind in terms of how I would walk into a facility. I'm not sure if I'm like explaining this very well, because basically, let's say, what's a good example? You're going to a new school, and you've been to another school and you didn't get along with everybody at that school, and you got kicked out, and then you have to go to another school. And so you have to go in and you have to find a way to fit in, and you have to find out who's who, or where, what, and then you have to get all your class requirements, and then, Lord willing, you end up graduating. And so I kind of noticed that there's this mindset, and one of the things that I had experienced from having a similar mindset of the people who are currently facing homelessness now here in Orange County, who are either going through something or have been through something and found themselves walking in through a homeless shelter. I noticed that I had shared the same kind of signs of depression or signs of withdrawal or whatever. And so what I had noticed, one of the things that helped me in particular, at least in terms of my depression, because one of my depression was I never saw a life outside of my siblings. So after my parents died, most of my work was one of you know that lady. So sometimes, like in the homeless world, like there's familiar people, you recognize them and you see them going from different places, and so this is where that whole using multiple pathways comes in handy. As they're behind me. Not allowed to like put her on blast, but. You recognize the faces, and so it was almost kind of similar in Arizona. It's like when I started getting the job, it was like one of the guys would walk up to me. It's like, "Hey, you're the guy from that other homeless shelter. I just got into a rehab, and I got sober, and we go to the same church, and then we end up working, and we kind of have that same kind of accountability because in our world, it's like our own little community of people who kind of like losers who can't seem to get it right." And so this is why I wanted to get on and talk about some of the things that have helped me. And one of the things that really helped me was a song that I did a little music video to prior. The music video, I'm gonna try to keep an eye to see if if it doesn't delete. One of the things that helped me, because I had an identity, I had so many different identities that created who I believed I was or who I thought I had to be when I was out in public. Or when I was out somewhere where I would have to modify my behavior, I would care too much about what other people thought, the people around me. Okay, so I don't know how much video I have left of this. So my personal opinion is I was going to kind of go on and just talk about the things that I had experienced personally in my own journey from different resource draining society, basically, from donations and etc., federal funding, blah blah blah, and so excuse me, so ladylike. But I don't know how much film I have left on it, so I'm just gonna keep it straight to the point. I'm just gonna be very rude about it, and if you don't like what I post, don't view it. And so basically, go in. If you go to a shelter, I'm going to tell you how to stay there and how to get by the best way possible without being using multiple services. And so, if you can, know why you're going in there. A lot of people go in there and they're in denial, and so they go in there and they're like, I'm not homeless. And so I talk about that in where shit's real. So when you walk in, you have to check yourself before you get there. If you're not humbling yourself when you walk in that door and telling sorry, but if you're not checking yourself when you walk into the place, and I had to go through that myself, where in my mind I wasn't feeling like I hit rock bottom. I was telling myself for some reason I'm like too cold, like I'm too numb as a human being to like feel the pain that I'm causing to my family and I'm causing to the community who kind of wanted me to do better and look at how I'm not doing better. So once I got a bigger picture of that, I kind of got a little playful with it, because then I was able to understand there's an audience that can connect with the using multiple pathways, and then there's also a bigger audience who thinks that it's a one-hitter quitter type, get into the rehab and it's a one and done, but it's not always that way. We see it in everywhere you go. It's like there's a parable that they talk about in church. It's where like one of the people went to get healed by Jesus, and for some reason Jesus only did half a healing. And then Jesus like, come see me again. I'm not really sure who it was, but I had to look in it. And so sometimes being in recovery and using multiple pathways means that we need to see Jesus every day. And so for me, one of the things that I have that has helped me when I go into these places, and I kind of notice that helps a lot of people too, is they say they call it a pecking order when you go in. And so a lot of times if you're going into a sober living or a shelter or a rehab place, you start from the bottom. So in rehab programs you have your first 30 days where you're clean, and then you have your 60 days when you're clean, and then you have your 90 days when you're clean, and then you start to graduate and progress. And so that in some way is a pecking order in terms of where you live and how do you say in a sober living shelter or anything else. My word of advice is, especially because I'm like quiet already, so it's kind of easy. But I'm so big and obvious, and I'm kind of a, how do you say, nervy and my flamboyance. I don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks. So for a lot of people around me, if they're not used to seeing a man with a purse or a man with a high pitched voice, it can be uncomfortable for them. Fuck you, I don't give a care. But for me, I do the best I can to humble myself, to stay in a place where I'm being open that I did everything wrong in my life that brought me there, and that there are people there that I have to trust in the process of being able to go through that problem. So I would say, number one, when you walk in, you definitely want to humble yourself. Oh, I love their trailer. It says live simply and be grateful. And so there's and then so if you do go find yourself in a shelter, try to open your heart up to the universe to heal you, because a lot of people, as soon as they walk through the doors, it can be a fast-paced, intimidating environment where you want to meet friends and you want to meet, know where to sit, who to eat with, and if it's not structured, sometimes you end up getting caught up in the wrong group, and you end up relapsing in the facility. And relapsing it's expected. So yeah, you're just gonna have to, if you're barely on the first step of 12 steps, you're gonna relapse if you didn't finish all the 12 steps. So a lot of people are like, well, you just went to rehab, and it's like, well, you have to do 12 hard steps, and there's a lot of stuff that you made mistakes to do, and it's not that easy to be able to go around and saying, hey everybody, here's a sign, I screwed up. So for me, one of the things that I did is that I took that sign and I started to say, hey, homeless for work for food, or because I wanted to make it not that shameful in terms of how, when we do make mistakes, that it's okay to get back up on your feet. And however many times you can do that, this is where that multiple pathways comes in, and how important it is for people to find a higher power and to be connected to that. My second thing is, don't get caught up in all the bullshit. There's going to be bullshit, and a lot of times it's from the staff, and a lot of times it's from the people around you. One, the people around you are healing. Two, the people who are managing the place are human. They are just human individuals. And so a lot of times we have too high of an expectation if we didn't fully humble ourselves. And so sometimes if you can humble yourself, and if you can, the word is surrender, but in the Christian world, surrender isn't a bad thing. It's actually a great thing, because no longer we understand and we realize that we weren't as strong as we were, and that God has been waiting for us. It's almost kind of like Pharaoh. It's like, all these bad things had to happen to Pharaoh in order for God to say, like, hey, like, I want your heart. Mean God then. He ended up taking his children, like a lot of people. But, so if you could humble yourself, find some place where you used to. I posted, a video of Jean-Claude Van Damme where finding order in the chaos. If you can just calm yourself and find, without arguing with anybody around you or in your head, and humble yourself and commit to a program where you can look within yourself and do the work outside of yourself. And they talk about celebrating small milestones. And so if you can celebrate the little things, and so for me, the biggest thing, not was that I was so shamefully open and honest, it was being able to do things on my own. I kind of prefer to do things on my own, and so if I can learn and to build up a better and a stronger skill set where I can be able to manage my own life, because I kind of had it easy. I did a lot of work, but I never did a lot of work. So it's weird. How do you do so much work but you don't do much work? for me, if you're ever watching this video and you find yourself going into a homeless shelter and you're like, fuck, I've been like going through a lot. The bridges I've been burning are done and gone. They're never coming back, or I'm trying to work to get this and that back. Know why you're in there in the first place. If you made a mistake, and don't beat yourself up for it. And humbling yourself doesn't mean humiliating yourself, but it also means to be real with yourself. Is that you have corroded or whatever to your body that, or has made your self kind of deplete into the person you were before you started using or before you became homeless. And so if you can know that reason, or if you could and then while you're in the program, I think I always I posted in my anger management. I didn't know how to trust the staff in the process because I was too afraid. And so one of the things that God had put in my heart, this is one of the things that separates Christians from the regular world, is that in the regular world they're just going about playing the system, doing whatever they want to do. But in the Christian world, it's about growth and drawing closer to God, and becoming more more of a youth or a servant or service to God and what God wants us to do. And so when I was in there, I was on this I knew that he had given me a mission, and my mission was to remove all the fear that was in my life. And so sometimes when I wasn't, even though I thought I was shameless, the fear of trusting somebody, or the fear of loving somebody who was different from me, or the fear of not loving them because... So I think I'm going to have to keep this like extra short. So I talked about two things. I kind of wanted to do three things, but I can't think of a third at the moment. But if you can find a quiet place or center yourself in a state of mind where prior to going into any of these shelters, even if you're like coming down or something, just plant a seed in your mind and tell yourself that once you detox or once you get through it, that it's going to be better, and to not beat yourself up or blah blah blah. And then when you do find yourself in a place where you feel like you're in an environment where you belong and that you could benefit from using the entire program to the best of its ability, then make a commitment to that healing process. I don't want to tell people to expect anything, because in our world, like the recovery world, it's I don't know the percentage, but I would say it's I chatted about it last night, but even just the idea of saying it's not guaranteed that everything's going to be the same way it was, or it's a gift from God if God sees a certain way. Not everybody is open to that. Some people really can't let go of their past. And so for me, one of the things that people kind of confuse, where they think that I'm not letting go of my past, is that I did a lot of work. I don't want to throw it away. It's like if I did 48 units at Santa Ana College, I have 12 more units before I graduate and transfer. I'm not going to throw away 48 units going to school for 3 years and staying 16 weeks for these classes. It doesn't make sense. And so all I have to do is go back to school and finish, and then transfer to wherever I can get a better scholarship. All in all, don't be ashamed of using multiple pathways, but if you do find yourself either on the streets and you want to make a commitment to, get your life together maybe, and you want to do something with your moving forward, do it. I know that sitting on the bus bench, I say this like every Tuesday, how can I say what I'm saying when I'm still here? But again, I didn't see it in Arizona. All I did was kind of threw a Hail Mary prayer out there, and it all worked out. And I was like, shit. And so years ago, when I was a teenager, and everything that I wanted, I prayed, and kind of just eventually came until I lost it. Then I was like, oh, I get it. And so for me, that's just the way my spiritual pattern works. Some people, their spiritual pattern works way different than mine. But if you ever find yourself going about these things, don't be afraid to keep trying again and trying again. And then if you do do better, then spread the love, or see if you could heal somebody, I don't know, or better your life than it was before. And so I chatted about that last night. Do you still dream if you lost everything? And so a lot of people, they're like, oh, I lost everything, I'm gonna drink away at my life, and I lost everything and I'm going to stop. And I think like that Job story really comes into play. It's because like Job lost everything, and then these conversations with, it's like, oh my gosh, like he had such a negative attitude, like, because even though he endured all of that, he still had to be humbled and checked by God. And then God was like, I'll give you everything and more. And so it's like, I think that's the dream for me, is that, not that I'm going to get a new family. It's because my family was cool, but I hope I can have my own family or have my own home one day and stuff. But realistically, I think that's my dream, is to be realistic, because I don't want these like outlandish dreams and they not be that realistic. So I'm gonna cut this video short because I don't know how much longer I have before it gets me cut off. But if you do find yourself using multiple pathways, find a place in yourself to just be real with yourself, and then to be open to whatever goes on around you. And please don't get caught up in the mess. It's all fun and games, but those people deserve a punch in the face, and whatever they're going through is none of your business. And the most important person in your life is that you need to take better care of yourself. And so I love you. Please do better for yourself. And if you lost everything, you're still here. That's all that matters. So I love you, and I'll talk to you guys next Tuesday. Hopefully I'll have a job.